Hi, my name is Nancy Estelle Zoder, and I'm the VP of Cloud HCM Product Strategy. Thank you for joining me today during this session to discuss the opportunities in ensuring business continuity while staying agile today, as well as during any disruption to your organization. Please be advised, this presentation may include some forward-looking statements. When we think about the building of an enterprise or sustaining the enterprise, there are many considerations. But the sweet spot is in this statement from the Harvard Business Review article on the Agile executive. Building an agile enterprise means finding the right balance between standard operations and pursuing innovations. And what this means is HR must find the balance for where they can standardize and optimize the business processes to manage organizational relationships. And this includes people and org, as well as automate processes. And that balance is also needed where they can pursue innovation and disrupt the process to ensure the opportunity to not only sustain the organization, but enable the workforce to optimize for today and provide the plans for tomorrow. However, there's an interesting statistic from an Accenture article, Reimagining the Employee Experience, that raises some concern. 75% of business leaders agree that current operating models will be unrecognizable in the next 5 years. This tells us that most organizations do not have the knowledge today to even imagine what they need to plan for. With this, it'll be critical for organizations to recognize the need for tools to support many scenario plans and enable the quick support for change. There are many components to consider when analyzing how to address change, and HR is just one spoke of that wheel. But we know they must partner with the rest of the business to execute on those changes quickly and efficiently to understand and support any possible scenario. Today, I will cover how your organization can ensure business continuity while staying agile in a disruptive environment. The wheel to support this change starts with the financial agility requirements, to how HR will enable the organization's leaders, to how that is socialized and communicated to the entire organization for efficient adoption of those changes. Let's start with the financial agility required to ensure workforce productivity and growth during a time of disruption and planning for the unknown. This disruption has proved the importance of financial agility. We also know this can have an adverse impact on workforce productivity. HR plays a critical role in this process, and this disruption has proven that HR is a necessary partner to finance in scenario planning. Cash management challenges need to be addressed first, and this will have a direct impact on human capital management. We saw this with the layoffs and the furloughs that took place across industries. However, some organizations did in fact take a more creative approach, and as a result of some thoughtful planning, they were able to come up with alternative plans such as pay reductions or reduction in hours worked to ensure these employees stayed employed. We know that human capital is the most valuable asset of an organization, and this disruption has proven this. HR, and especially HR leadership, is a critical partner in the development of the plans, and more importantly, in the execution of those plans. Those plans start with the resources. Now, for the purposes of this presentation, we're going to focus on the human resources. And organizations needed to ensure there is an alignment to their goals and objectives. And HR must have the workforce plans in place to support this. Now, of course, this starts with the budgetary constraints, but this also requires an understanding of your current workforce, the skills, and how they match up to your goals for the next 12 months, but also for the next 3 to 5 years. This requires visibility and input into the scenario plans that have traditionally been managed by finance. HR must propose multiple plans to demonstrate the cost to manage to the status quo, reorganize, lay off, or even reskill their worker population. That human capital cost will be related to the organization's understanding of the skills needed, the cost of that skill, but also the cost to reorganize, assign, and/or acquire that skill. This is where the alignment of HR and finance is in fact critical. And as we've seen with this disruption, timely execution of those plans is also critical. These plans must not only support the need to ensure productivity of the workforce, but the compliance of any contractual terms and conditions. Having solutions in place to support the development of strategic workforce plans, approvals, and execution of those plans is needed to support your Agile organization to move quickly and with compliance. And this starts with the ability to view what skills you have in your organization and identify where the gaps are. Once those gaps are in fact identified, HR can determine how to fill those gaps, reorganize, reskill, or hire, and this will be determined by the drivers. Examples of those drivers could be time and/or budget. And approval of those financial plans, HR must act quickly. HR must understand the impacted populations, employment agreements, as well as local requirements to ensure compliance. Lack of compliance has an impact on cost, but more importantly, also has the inability for the organization to act quickly to change. Understanding of those contractual terms and conditions and how they apply to your workforce before you make the change is critical to support your Agile workforce. Upon confirming that compliance, HR must still ensure that proper approvals are managed and changes are quickly communicated. Organizations need to easily visualize the changes, make additional changes, perhaps with simple drag and drop capabilities, as well as quickly add requisitions to the plan and understand the predictive impact of those changes to quickly respond to the changes with a single step. Predictive analytics must be understood before the approval of the plan. This gives local HR as well as managers the information they need to make an informed decision and make adjustments as needed on the changes impacting their workforce. This information will demonstrate the expected impact of the change and if it will result in higher or lower productivity as well as higher effectiveness. Unfortunately, during this pandemic, we saw some tough decisions being made by organizations. As organizations had to make decisions to manage cash flow and workforce changes had to be made. Of course, the intent is to contain the costs and ensure compliance, so HR must be involved. In this example, manufacturing organization made the decision to furlough part of their workforce as a result of reviewing the multiple scenario plans developed by finance. But when HR was called in to execute on those plans, we found that this was definitely not an option. The workforce changes that finance proposed to furlough were unionized. HR knew that this action could not be taken without involving union representation and approval. HR's involvement not only ensured that the organization stayed compliant with their union contracts, but it also ensured that they maintained the relationships with those unions and the union workers. With HR support in this case, finance was able to develop additional scenario plans, and they were able to get the approval to quickly, and more importantly, with compliance, execute and communicate these new plans, thus demonstrating again the importance of HR's involvement in the development process of those scenario plans and not just be part of that output. Now, HR has a critical role in financial planning, as that use case is just shown, but just as critical is their role in supporting that Agile leader. Now, Peter Capelli and Anna Tavis wrote an article back in the early 2018 timeframe on HR Goes Agile, which was published in the Harvard Business Review. And in this article, they state that organizations are pushing them down to the front lines, equipping and empowering employees to operate more independently. But that's a huge behavioral change, and people need support to pull it off. Now, what this shows us is that this is especially important today, and is in recognition of the need for HR to not only support the Agile leader, but also support the Agile HR function to enable the worker population. This requires HR to recognize what is strategically required and to support it tactically in an Agile environment. This is HR's struggle, and we've seen it quite often in the evolution of HR's attempts to move from transactional to strategic, even with the support of technology. From the introduction of self-service to employee experience to where we are now, which is to not only allow local HR managers and employees to support the simple transactions, but ensure their involvement as part of the strategic workforce needs. In a McKinsey study last year, it was determined that HR needs to reallocate their responsibilities to other supporting roles. This is not new. We know about the other local HR functions such as business partners, but also centralized functions like centers of excellence and shared services. This allows support of transactions by these teams so HR can in fact focus on the strategic initiatives such as scenario planning, thus supporting the strategy to continue to increase business focus, efficiencies, and effectiveness. Now, HR not only requires the understanding of the changing needs, but HR also needs to provide the tool to enable those resources. Reskilling is definitely a necessity. Providing the tools to support these workers to adapt will ensure continued productivity. And so with this, HR needs to provide current as well as predictive insight into the organization, as well as provide the appropriate guidance. There are some rules that only HR needs to know though, and because of the complexity of the application of those rules. And that's where automation comes into play. Automation is needed to support the application of those rules to ensure compliance and quick execution of change. Oracle provides solutions for this insight, from planning solutions to predictive analytics, but also the automation of the contractual terms and conditions, such as seniority rules or eligible jobs, as well as guidance, which could be automated and or personal depending on the need. But in addition to that, ensuring data integrity is key to compliance. So organizations must provide defaulting and autocomplete configuration options to support the accurate data entry to comply with those contractual rules. And of course, there are times when personalized support is required. With Oracle's Cloud HR Help Desk, action plans are defined to ensure your support staff is providing the support needed for your worker population, and even providing direction when a real-time conversation is needed. So once those plans are approved and compliance is confirmed, guidance is required to execute on those plans, providing step-by-step instructions to ensure the new workers have information to support their productivity. Onboarding is just one of the many journeys that a person can have with the organization. So HR will want to simplify and optimize the services workers need to not only be productive, but also to be engaged. Oracle Journeys allows workers to not waste their time by giving them the direction and guidance personalized for them to get the job done and break down the various silos with integrated process guidance. With Oracle Journeys, organizations can effectively guide their workforce through any type of change: onboarding, transfers, career changes, and even return from work or return to work, or any other change that requires information to be available to the worker, step by step, and most importantly, personalized for them. We saw this most recently with a retailer in the UK just a couple of months ago. With the shutdown, the organization had to act quickly. First, to manage capital expenditures, then their needs went beyond the balance sheets to quickly addressing the changing needs of the facilities, distributions, as well as their stores. They needed a quick view of their workforce to determine who can be quickly deployed to support the stores, but also the new delivery services. They determined that they could not support this change to their business with their current workforce, and they needed to expand and adapt quickly. They built a plan to quickly hire, but most important, quickly onboard these new employees. They did not have the time to slowly ramp up. Oracle Cloud HCM supported this process to ensure their new workforce got the specific direction they needed to hit the ground running. Let's take a look at a short video from this customer.
The co-op is one of the largest co-ops in the world, and we generate revenue of 9.5 billion. Before Oracle HCM and Oracle integration, it was taking our hiring managers 4 minutes and 60 clicks to actually raise a requisition. The key driver for us was to reduce our time to hire. We had to reimagine our recruitment service. We did consider other applications, AWS. The indication was that that would take us 2 years to implement. With Oracle HCM and Oracle integration, we actually implemented the whole service within 2 quarters. Now that we've implemented the service to raise that requisition, it takes our managers 30 seconds and 5 clicks, which is fantastic. Labour turnover has decreased by 11%. We have an offer acceptance rate of 98%. 65% of the colleagues who join us are performing well in role. The quality of our hires are better, and that's having a fantastic impact on performance in stores, which is great.
And finally, we must recognize the importance of the cultural support of the social objective. Although many organizations recognize the line that should not be crossed, HR knows that you hire the whole person and not just their skill. Organizations need to provide tools to their workers to support their well-being and their personal and career growth, and allow the worker to not only be productive in their work, but excel and committed to your organization. In a recent McKinsey study, they explain how important it is to understand that you will never have a 100% fail-proof plan. However, as stated, Agile organizations emphasize quick, efficient, and continuous decision-making, preferring 70% probability now versus 100% certainty later, thus demonstrating the need for multiple scenario plans, which accounts for productivity alignment to those organizational objectives. This pandemic was truly a test for many organizations and raised many questions. How do you define agility for your workforce? And with this, are you able to quickly adapt to a disruption? But also, how has it changed since the pandemic? Have you instituted new scenario plans even to your day-to-day activities? How do you ensure focus and productivity? And do you now find a need to accelerate that plan to deploy technology solutions to support that remote worker? And now we're faced with the most challenging question, and the one that we're all in fact struggling with. How do you ensure belonging and organizational commitment during this very trying time? These are some really tough questions, but must not only be addressed, but also resolved. Now, in the midst of the pandemic, one telecommunications organization required the deployment of their workers to remote locations to support the need to make cell service accessible. This was an enormous ask of the organization on the employee. And although the organization immediately reacted with what you would expect, which is more compensation for this work, this was a risk that went beyond their work to their health. The organization understood what they were asking of the employees and recognized the need to immediately focus on the wellness of their workforce. The employees' safety was a top priority. The employees' connection to their peers was a top priority. Ensuring that the employees understood that the organization's top priority was, in fact, the employee was critical to their success. This organization, in fact, provided tools to their employees to enable their productivity to do their job. In addition, they provided tools to ensure their wellness and provided them with the tools to support the changing needs of their business. As a result, they were an employer of choice in their field and recognized by other organizations as going up and beyond for their workforce. Now, of course, this is not an isolated case. We've seen this across industries during this time, and definitely as a sign of the times. In the Deloitte Global Human Capital Trends Survey this year, belonging and well-being ranked highest in importance across the regions around the world. Organizations, again, are recognizing that they are not hiring the skill, they're hiring the whole person, and workers need to be engaged and need assurance that their well-being is a top priority for the organization in which they work. It must go beyond the fluff. Leadership must support the initiative to manage the sense of belonging as well as wellness of the employee. In a variety of studies, we consistently see the link between belonging and well-being to organizational performance. This requires HR to provide the tools to their worker population to access information on the organization, but also the opportunities. HR must also ensure that workers know the world in which they work. Oracle's Cloud HCM provides HR with the tools support for this belonging and wellness. It starts with the guided, simplified experience that was described in the last section of this presentation. But it also goes to the engagement with the use of connections, answering your workers' questions. Who's in their team? Who are their peers? Are there people in the org with similar interests or skills? And who do I aspire to be like? And or how can I grow and who can help me? Connection provides a brand new directory experience. Leveraging Oracle Search, users can search people, departments, and locations, as well as other defining attributes. Here, users can review their own profile, including person and organizational details, as well as experience and find out what others think about them. And as we've seen with the support of diversity and inclusion, it is about providing visibility to workers and ensuring equal opportunity to view any and all of the growth opportunities, including even task-based work. Visibility promotes inclusion by allowing all workers to have exposure to all opportunities, not restricting access based on who you are, who you know, or where you may be located. And of course, with regular learning and learning paths defined, workers are now enabled to support their alignment to the new goals of the organization. But it's also about growing their reputation within the organization. Workers can be recognized as an expert based on feedback they receive from their peers and build their internal brand, providing them with the exposure in the organization to be recognized as a leader or an expert in their space. And last, but definitely not least, provide personal growth opportunities that align with the organization's social objective. By providing access to volunteering options managed, supported, and encouraged by the organization, not only provides engagement opportunities to your workers, but also skill enhancement opportunities. Now, this idea is definitely not a new one. We all know that to be successful, we must adapt to the changing work environment, and we will always have disruptions for which we must adapt. And HR is a key spoke in this wheel to move your organization forward. Your organization needs to have the tools not only to effectively manage your workforce, but the tools to predict the needs of your organization, develop those scenario plans, execute on those plans quickly and accurately whilst staying compliant. And most important, providing the tools needed for your workers to ensure inclusion, growth, and well-being to get the highest level of satisfaction as well as productivity from your team. This is a pivotal time for HR to demonstrate the importance of people strategy. Beyond those budgets and administration, to strategy and innovation to ensure business continuity while staying agile during any disruption. Thank you for joining today's session. For more information, please go to oracle.com/HCM.